Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed lunch and that you are ready for a great talk as we conclude lunch. I'm going to just pause a moment and let the conversation subside a little bit. So I'm Mary Miller, and I am a deep friend of Baltimore Community Lending and delighted to be part of this amazing celebration today as we reach the 30-year mark. So I have the high honor of introducing Rosie Rios, who is the 43rd Treasurer of the United States. My introduction of Rosie could be longer than her remarks today because she has such a distinguished and lengthy career. But I'll try to confine myself just to the highlights. In her 8 years at the Obama administration, Rosie was the longest-serving Senate-confirmed Treasury official. No small feat. Rosie was the CEO of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing and the U.S. Mint, overseeing all currency and coin production with close to 4,000 employees, 8 facilities, and a $5 billion budget. If you've ever seen the Capital One television commercial that asks, "What's in your wallet?" I can assure you that you have Rosie's signature in your wallet right now. Her name appears on $1.69 trillion of currency in circulation globally. Rosie's entire career has focused on real estate finance, economic development, and urban revitalization in both the public and private sectors. Prior to her Treasury service, she was a managing director of investments for McFarlane Partners, a $22 billion real estate investment management firm in San Francisco. She was the director of economic development and/or redevelopment for multiple cities, including Oakland, Fremont, San Leandro, and Union City. Her personal story is very impressive. One of 9 children to be raised by a single mother in Los Angeles, Rosie is a graduate of Harvard. And in May of this year, I attended a ceremony at Harvard to unveil a portrait of Rosie, the first Latina in Harvard's 382-year history to be so honored. Yeah. But there's more. Last year, Rosie was inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Rosie was instrumental in the effort to place a portrait of a woman on our U.S. currency for the first time in over 100 years, and she led the process to propose Harriet Tubman as that woman. She is the founder of Empowerment 2020, an initiative that promotes the physical recognition of historical American women. She remains active in real estate finance in the Bay Area through RESCUE, which stands for Real Estate for Socially Conscious Urban Empowerment. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so pleased to introduce Rosie Rios.
Thank you so much, Mary. I would hire you permanently for my PR. That was amazing, and I appreciate your support over all the years that we were in Treasury together, and most of all, I appreciate your friendship. So thank you. This is such a lovely opportunity for me to be here to talk about literally one of my treasured topics, community development. In particular, I'd also like to thank Bill Ariano and Godspeed on his recovery for the invitation. I always look forward to visiting Baltimore. It's home to my favorite ballpark. That is true. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I always love to learn about all the efforts underway to keep this beautiful jewel shining in spite of all the noise. As you heard, I spent about a third of my career working in local government, and my last public sector job, before going back into the private sector and before the administration, was serving as Director of Economic Development and Redevelopment for the City of Oakland. I oversaw the city's community development efforts, including tax increment financing, small business lending, and business attraction and retention efforts. So Oakland and Baltimore actually have quite a bit in common. Their populations are similar. They both have challenges with crime. In fact, sadly enough, they have almost the exact same crime rate of 19 incidents per day per every 100,000 residents. And sometimes they don't get as much attention as that other large city down the way, whether it's DC or San Francisco, or those other airports, or those other sports teams. Yet their historic architecture is legendary. Their special cultural districts are welcoming. And most of all, the pride of its people is what keeps them alive and hopeful. In fact, looking back on my career in commercial real estate, investment management, and government, I would say that my days in local government, serving as either in an economic development or redevelopment capacity, those were definitely the most fulfilling for me. Seeing the immediate fruits of our labor, working hand in hand with local business and residents who had built their entire lives and the lives of their families on the health of their cities, we all knew that if change was going to happen, we were going to do it locally, and we were going to do it together. So when I had the opportunity to serve my country and continue my work at a much larger scale, I did not hesitate. I actually started my work in Treasury as part of the Treasury Federal Reserve transition team when many of the priority policies were being developed. I never in a million years thought that I would ever work for the federal government. But who knew that my career path at that point in real estate, economic development, and investment management would result in a focus on housing, jobs, and access to capital. It's like I was meant to work on that team during one of the most consequential times in our economic history, and it was not an easy decision. As you heard, I was managing director of investments for a $22 billion firm based in San Francisco. My children were 8 years old and 12 years old at the time. Not exactly the best ages to think about relocating your kids, but I jumped. In fact, we all jumped, and it was one of the most amazing roller coaster rides of my life. Who wants a merry-go-round? I was one of about 24 finance professionals who came on board in November of 2008 to implement the legislation that Congress had just passed in October of 2008, called the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, which later became known as the Troubled Asset Relief Program. So all of us worked very, very hard from November of 2008 through February of 2009, working with Secretary Paulson, working with President Bush, to implement that legislation so that when Obama came into office, President Obama came into office in January of 2009, he would hit the ground running. And it really was an amazing honor to be part of that. It was scary, and I think people forget just how scary it was during those months. During our time in the administration, though, there was widespread recognition about the vital role that small businesses play in our economy and our strong commitment to support them. And the CDFI fund was a crucial part of our strategy. After the term of the transition team was completed, 7 of us were recommended for a permanent appointment, and I was one of those 7. I was fortunate to have been appointed as the first ever senior advisor to the Secretary in the area of community development. I was the Secretary's representative on the CDFI Advisory Board and worked actively to make sure that our support continued to grow. You may or may not know that during my time in Treasury, I became an accidental feminist, an accidental educator, and an accidental historian. So I'm going to give you a little bit of history about urban renewal to lead into the conversation about how I see the future. Urban renewal in the United States started in the early 20th century with the redevelopment areas considered slums at that time. Following the Great Depression, social programs gained traction in the federal government. In the late 1930s and 1940s, local public housing authorities focused on creating affordable housing. The Housing Act of 1949 introduced a new federal program, urban redevelopment, later known as urban renewal, in the Housing Act of 1954. Governments, staffed by experts, took blighted and slum areas by eminent domain, demolished the buildings therein, and turned the properties over to private developers to rebuild. Reformers realized that solving the problems of urban decay depended on coordinating a variety of economic development efforts. What was referred to as the War on Poverty responded to this need through developing policies that supported comprehensive community action. Over the following decades, the idea of urban renewal grew beyond just affordable housing. With the passage of the Community Reinvestment Act in 1977, community development financial institutions took shape, which encourages financial institutions to meet the needs of all sectors of the communities they serve. Amid growing concern about the social consequences of investment decisions made by the financial services industry on the nation's low-income communities, CDFIs began filling a niche by providing capital and credit in areas that are often difficult for traditional financing institutions to serve. Access to responsible and affordable credit and capital in minority and economically distressed communities is now part of community development, and urban renewal encompasses commercial real estate, community centers, and infrastructure projects. It has given way to empowering local residents and developing mixed-use communities. In the 1990s, there was a push to stimulate economic opportunity in America's distressed communities. Although philanthropic and nonprofit support helped the movement grow, government funding became an essential community development component in order to thrive. Community development projects sprang from areas other than housing and development in using an array of governmental, nonprofit, philanthropic, and private sector tools to deliver services and provide resources to once forgotten communities. Supporting community development in Treasury formally began with the Regal Community Development and Regulatory Improvement Act, establishing the CDFI Fund in 1994 under Secretary Bob Rubin. In fact, I love when he still talks about the value of CDFIs. In fact, to this day, he actually, not that long ago, spoke passionately about their value and with pride. The act is what led me and inspired me to get into local government. In 1994, I was still working in commercial real estate, and with the passage of that federal legislation, I said to myself, I want to work in local government. And in 1994, I started as a development specialist for the city of San Leandro in the Bay Area. The spirit of the creation of the CDFI Fund at that time was to promote economic revitalization and community development through investing and providing assistance to CDFIs. So as you know, I certainly don't need to relive through this crowd all the tools in the toolbox that the Treasury Department has helped with CDFIs. That includes, of course, the Bank Enterprise Award, its native initiatives, the CDFI Bond Guarantee Program, and of course, one of my favorites, the New Market Tax Credits. Since its inception in 1994, the CDFI Fund has built a nationwide network of CDFIs committed to ensuring that underserved communities have access to quality, affordable, and credible financial services. The CDFI Fund has awarded over $2 billion to community development organizations and financial institutions, has provided guarantees over $500 million in bonds, and has awarded allocations of new market tax credits to attract private sector investments totaling over $40 billion. As federal spending on community development through other federal agencies continued to be cut, taxpayer-supported financing is cited as a critical tool in redeveloping the distressed communities, leveraging private sector support, and providing additional resources for urban renewal projects. Tax credits and other incentives for developers, investors, and business owners can play a significant role in providing physical and economic environments in cities. The MTC program was considered a solution of forming new public-private partnerships which would help overcome barriers to investments in potentially lucrative new markets in the U.S. The MTC program was authorized in the Community Renewal Tax Relief Act of 2000 as part of a bipartisan effort to stimulate investment and economic growth in low-income neighborhoods and rural communities that lack access to patient capital needed to support and grow businesses, create jobs, and sustain healthy communities. The introduction of the New Market Tax Credit was designed to highlight areas of continued distress, places left behind by other initiatives. As these communities develop, they become attractive to investors, creating a ripple effect that spurs more investment, which is exactly what the people in this room are looking for. We should keep in mind, by law, all MTC investments must be made in economically distressed communities. However, more than 72% of all MTC investments have been in communities exhibiting severe economic distress, including unemployment rates more than 1.5 times the national average, a poverty rate of 30% or more, or a median income at or below 60% of the area median. During our administration, we moved expeditiously to stabilize the economy through initiatives such as the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or what's called the Recovery Act, which greatly enhanced the ability of CDFI Fund to support financial institutions serving low-income communities. The Recovery Act provided our programs with unprecedented funding levels, which had been deployed in record time to benefit the communities most in need. Unlike in most economic crises, we were fortunate to have a nationwide network of CDFIs that were able to help us confront economic problems head-on. These first responders continue to use their knowledge and resources to keep their organizations performing and delivering for their clients, even in times of great difficulty. By playing a critical role in financing small businesses and providing access to capital where it is most needed, CDFIs are on the front lines of creating jobs and economic opportunity in communities across the country. Small businesses, which historically have created 2 out of every 3 new jobs in the country, are essential to our nation's economic recovery. And it's important that we continue to build on the success we've had with CDFIs. That's why, during one of the most consequential times of our economic history, we laid out a series of initiatives to make it easier for small businesses to open their doors, expand their operations, and hire more workers. These proposals were guided by the idea that while government can't guarantee a business success, it could certainly knock down barriers that keep entrepreneurs from opening or expanding, like the lack of affordable credit. The CDFI Fund is an example of this, and there were many tools that were utilized to help disadvantaged communities come to life. One initiative that spans across the administration is Strong Cities, Strong Communities, or what we called SC2. This initiative is an example of how Treasury has supported other federal agencies and local communities during the economic recovery. Through the CDFI Fund, Treasury provided technical assistance and had specific success in 2 areas, including Memphis, Tennessee, and Chester, Pennsylvania. With financing from 2 CDFI institutions, a Philadelphia-based food bank was able to provide residents with low-cost, nutritious food in a supermarket-style food bank for the first time in 12 years. Fair and Square opened in September of 2013, and the $4.5 million project had helped attract investment and growth in Chester, Pennsylvania. In Memphis, the CDFI Fund awarded the River City Investment Corporation a technical assistance grant to allow this corporation to take the additional steps necessary to become a certified CDFI. Also, the Small Business Jobs Act of 2010 provided a set of tax breaks and lending incentives to spur hiring and growth at small businesses, including the Small Business Lending Fund. Our own Mary Miller led many of these efforts, and small businesses and startups saw the positive benefits right away. In fact, I should note, people wouldn't realize this. First of all, Mary Miller was the first, and is the first, female Deputy Secretary in the history of Treasury, which is a big feat, absolutely. She was the first female Undersecretary of Domestic Finance. But more importantly, behind all the titles, she really led the efforts on a number of business activities that I think many of us still benefit from. And certainly the Recovery Act and all the Jobs Act that came from all her efforts, which I will highlight. We will all be eternally grateful for the legacy that you left behind, Mary. Thank you so much. The Act eliminated capital gains for key investments in small firms, increased the deductions small businesses can take for new equipment and other expenses, and made more credit available. Another program that I've had the pleasure of working on at Treasury was the State Small Business Credit Initiative, or SSBCI. Thanks again to Mary's leadership on behalf of Treasury. The SSBCI was authorized under the Small Business Jobs Act of 2010 with $1.5 billion in funding. This program allowed states to build on successful models for state small business lending and investment programs, including capital access programs, collateral support programs, loan guarantee programs, loan participation programs, and venture capital programs. States were required to demonstrate a reasonable expectation that a minimum of $10 in new private lending would result for every $1 in federal funding over the life of the program. Each state designed its own small business programs, and 5 types of programs were eligible for SSBCI funds: capital access, loan guarantee, loan participation, collateral support, and venture. Through the end of our administration, participating states expended almost $1 billion in program funds, spurring approximately $7 billion in private sector lending and investment to small businesses. And it also helped create and save more than 150,000 American jobs. In addition, our administration had successfully worked with Congress to cut small business taxes. We waived fees on new SBA loans to save folks money on their payments. These loans and savings gave small business owners the funds they needed to invest in their companies. But there was still more that we felt we needed to do. While MTC and the work CDFI Fund does is the way Treasury Department touches our local community every day, there are several other federal agencies and programs that have specific initiatives that provide urban renewal as well. These agencies included HUD, Department of Energy, USDA, and they all use place-based strategies to direct resources and leverage private capital to increase lending and investment in some of the country's poorest communities. In our administration, we championed cross-agency partnerships to coordinate and direct these resources to communities that have faced significant long-term economic challenges. Treasury is able to play a unique and important role in generating economic growth in America, and CDFIs were definitely one of our most powerful tools. They have proven themselves to be a valuable part of America's economic recovery and have democratized access to capital. When I was Treasurer of the United States, I often ask people if they've ever heard of these programs, and sometimes I get a resounding yes, and other times it surprises me that these tools are not always widely known. In the time of fiscal austerity, it takes several innovative tools to ignite economic growth. The CDFI funds programs are Treasury's way of creating those catalysts to spur economic development and growth. But now, more than ever, our urban renewal efforts are at risk. We need continued advocacy to Treasury and the administration to deploy the resources necessary to create jobs, revitalize neighborhoods, and build communities across the nation. Since leaving the administration, and after 10 glorious years in the Washington, D.C. area, I have moved back home to the Bay Area. It's a little different than what I expected. So basically, for those 10 years that I was gone, San Francisco alone has generated over 700,000 additional jobs. So when I left, San Francisco's population was about 740,000. So they added to their daytime population an additional 700,000 jobs. Ready for this? There is one billionaire for every 11,500 people in the city of San Francisco. That's what happened since I left. Yet, California still has one of the highest poverty rates in the country. The disparity of wealth is more than obvious, and it really, really troubles me. And my town of Oakland, my metropolis growing up, has seen its neighborhood cores displaced, with many of my old community partners who can no longer afford to live where they were raised. We really need to give some really hard thought and action to how we define success. Our work is not done, and I feel like that my career path is now culminating into something more, something I actually did not expect. The private sector has to take a very active role in addressing some of the unintended consequences of growth and prosperity. My new journey now focuses on what I call building for good. As I said along the way, I became an accidental educator, and I'm now focused on using real estate, technology, and job growth with educational institutions in a coordinated effort to revitalize my neighborhoods in a completely different way. Mary mentioned in my bio that I use this approach that I call the acronym RESCUE, Real Estate for Socially Conscious Urban Empowerment. I have 2 very large projects underway, under consideration, one in San Francisco and one in Oakland, with key partners and industry leaders and educational institutions to allow these cities, and more importantly, the youth of these cities, to see their future. These are long-term efforts. As we all know, nothing happens overnight, but the first steps was really to wake up and realize that we cannot do this alone. These are not just public-private partnership white papers. This is not just the concept of a think tank. Can you imagine if every think tank in Washington, D.C. actually called itself a think tank and an action tank? Can you imagine how much work it could actually get done? So yes, what I am tackling now are real action plans, real partnerships with an army of angels who are finally ready to roll up their sleeves. Awareness and action, in this case, the action now needs to be local. You will hear much more about this at some later point down the line, but I finally feel like I found my true calling. It was the work that I did at the local level that first inspired me, the work at the federal level that propelled me, and my return home that has made me passionate about really making a transformational and a disruptional difference. It is good to be back home and work on real solutions that tie everything together. Small businesses and local communities are the backbone of our economy. The commitment to economic revitalization starts with our local communities, and organizations like yours are what we will continue to use to spur growth. I would like to extend my sincere appreciation for the 30 years of hard work by Baltimore Community Lending, and I look forward to seeing your continued growth in neighborhood investments, and most importantly, investments in people over the next 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you again to the Honorable Rosie Rios for taking time to share with us her path and passion of community revitalization. May we all be inspired to continue and harness the great Treasury programs that Rosie helped elevate and her call to action. So thank you again. Really quick, in true Bill Ariano fashion, he cannot take a break, and I did want to acknowledge he has sent a representative. His wife is here with us, Bonnie, and if you see Bonnie around, you may see a phone in her hand, and on the phone will be Bill Skyping. So be sure to grab her. I want to thank her for attending in his absence, and again, thank Bill for all of his hard work in putting together this program and all the hard work he has devoted to BCL over the years, so thank you to him. At this time, I'm going to pivot now to introduce a Baltimore gem, A1 Chops, first with a short video followed by a very vibrant performance.
This is the moment it all became real.
We want to do an entire digital series about your life.
A single guest spot turned into a show of their own.
We're going to follow you around the city of Baltimore.
Anthony and I have now moved down to Baltimore. Our crew is already there.
The show is called The Build-Up.
Ellen sent us on a mission to help extraordinary people doing amazing things in their community.
Oh my God.
The 6-episode Ellen Tube original digital series is hosted by the Cousins, design and construction experts Anthony Carino and John Culinary.
You're probably wondering, why are we here?
Every episode
This place is going to blow them away.
filled with incredible renovations and life-changing surprises for A1 Chops in the entire Baltimore community.
It's just crazy how much things changed between the last 3 months and now. I couldn't believe it. Like,
First, this newly renovated apartment for the drummers downtown.
every time I just wake up and I come in the living room, I just can't believe, like, this is where we live at. Like,
We stopped by to get a look for ourselves.
we did a coin toss to see who get the master bedroom. Easy, marvelous. Like, I can just tell from like every detail to every inch inside the building that they just put like their heart inside.
In another episode,
Oh my God.
the Cousins renovated their former band room at Edmondson Westside High School.
We found out we was just like shocked.
It's the place it all began,
They did so much for us in the upbringing of A1 Chops and us being who we are.
and where today they volunteer 2 to 3 times a week.
It makes me just feel blessed because it's one thing about receiving all this, but being able to receive and also give back is the best thing possible, like the best thing ever.
The show even follows them to M&T Bank Stadium,
Yo, bro, we on the field, bro. We touching the grass, like.
where they performed on the football field. It's all of those opportunities that inspires Timothy and Malik
I say this all the time. I always tell everyone, dreams can come true.
to give even more.
We know how hard it is out here on the Baltimore streets and how like the youth is treated and how they don't have like a lot of outlets and a lot of things like that. And we know that it's not a lot of arts. We want to be able to push to help keep that in the school so that kids have different things and different outlets to go to instead of just going to the streets or doing things they're not supposed to be doing.
I done cried like 5-10 times.
This looks like a band room.
Everybody, when they look at Baltimore, they think of the violence, they think of the killing, they think of the drugs, the different things that's in this community, that's in this city, I apologize, that's in the city that is dark.
The duo is hoping the series has changed people's perception about the city and encouraged them to give back.
We all keep pushing, we all keep striving. I believe that this city, a light can be shined on this city, and Baltimore can be known as a great city.
A1 Chops' latest adventure, changing their lives and transforming our community.
Giving back to these kids.
But the queen has been overthrown, and I'm not sleeping now. The dark is too hard to beat, and I'm not keeping now the strength I need. The strength I'm not.
Okay, remember what I told you. Be your own boss. Love yourself. Get up and dance. Level up.
Level up, 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 level up. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Watch me. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Them old mistakes are gone, I won't do them no more. That's old news, that's new news, I done did that before. I turn nothing to something, my comeback on 100. Let's talking, more action, you just gon' see coming. I just keep elevating, no losses, just upgrading. My lessons made blessings, I turn that into money. They gotta never settle, this view is so much better. I'm chilling, I'm winning, like on another level. Oh, you can talk all you want. See me, I stay prayed up, nothing I'm afraid of, and I can have it all. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. They freeze get dropped like weight. Team love don't want no hate. I'm grinding, I'm shining, up, I'm on my way. They gotta never settle. This view is so much better. I'm chilling, I'm winning, like on another level. Oh, you can talk all you want. See me, I stay prayed up, nothing I'm afraid of, and I can have it all. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's go. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. All this sauce so level, on another level. Elevate your level, level. Graduate your level, there's no one on it. Nah. Hey, level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy. Level up, 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 level up. All this on me so yummy, all this sauce so yummy. No, you want this yummy, yummy all in your tummy.
Wasn't that amazing? Let's give them another round of applause. Thank you, A1 Chops. And hopefully, I think Bonnie has Bill on the phone, so make sure you guys get a chance to say hi to Bill. And he wanted to hear them, so that's really why he showed up virtually. We will now have a video featuring our Baltimore Business Lending borrowers.
My name is Sid Sharma. Our company is Mobtown Fermentation, and our primary product is wild kombucha. So the reason we went to BBL is because we're a very fast-growing company. Since 2015, we've grown by almost 500%. And as a result, we're in constant need of capital to fund that growth. Baltimore Business Lending made it easy for us to obtain capital quickly and also from a less conventional source. The nice thing about Baltimore Business Lending is that it was a great combination of having the community feel, but also being much quicker than something like the SBA. The strength is definitely the fact that they do not require collateral in all cases, and that it's very quick and easy to work with them because they are local. I would say the main challenge might be that obviously a conventional bank or lender is able to offer a slightly lower rate. About 4 months ago, we moved to a new facility in Northwest Baltimore. It's a 13,000 square foot brewery. And in order to fund that growth, we approached Baltimore Business Lending, and they were able to give us the capital we needed to make the transition to our new brewery and continue to grow. Since receiving funding from Baltimore Business Lending, we've also been able to grow our team from 12 to 21 employees.
Gerald Cole, Off the Rocks Wine and Beer in Highlandtown, Baltimore. Why did I come to BCL? Me and my wife, Ty, worked on a business plan for a few years, and we, shopped around with different banks, try to get like traditional lending, and it wasn't going our way. So we, next 2 years, we were, meeting people. We got introduced to the BCL, BBL, and it was a little non-conventional lending. Better way for us to, get accepted for small loans. BCL, it really helped us walk through the process. With understanding lending, Bonnie Crockett there, she was big help for us. I don't think